Welcome to another Harry's Hobbies video, and what we're working on today is the Monroe Models J. Burke filling station that I recently did the box opening video on that, which wasn't really a box, it was more of a plastic bag, and that's this model right here. So they have you start by working on the concrete base for the model, which has 3 spots here. Which I'm guessing are going to be the gas pumps or one of the towers. And in this piece, which is actually the raised area where the building itself will sit, and you can see right here it's kind of a small area. And I think what I'll do is, to give you an idea of scale as to how big this is going to be, here's a quarter. I'm going to put that right in the middle of where that building is going to be sitting. And you can see the scale of how small these models really are. So as the work progresses, that'll give you a little bit of an idea. And what the directions call for is actually to add the sidewalks to the edges. However, I noticed a little bit of warping with this, and that's from shipping or humidity or whatever manages to get to this just a little bit, and it's not a big deal. So instead of adding this first, I'm going to add this piece first, which lines up right in here. And according to the directions, you make sure that these 2 smaller holes here are towards you when you're working. Well, I suppose you can do it any way you want. And then this sits up and lines up along these 2 lines that are in here that denote what the concrete pad should look like. So the glue I'm going to be using is the Gorilla Glue gel. I happen to like this a little bit better. You can use Zap-A-Gap from the hobby shop if you like. That's not a problem. I find that this is a little bit cheaper than going to the hobby shop and getting the Zap-A-Gap or just the plain Zap, because I do use this, and I do use the thinner version as well, which is this one. And it's the same stuff. Keep that in mind. It's just a gel super glue, and it just happens to work great. Now on the back side, you can see where it's kind of looks like it's stained, and I think that's from the laser cutting process. So I want the whiter part to be up on top for the paint aspect. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a nice bead around the edges, and some in the middle, and then I'm going to take a toothpick. You can't have enough toothpicks around when you're building models, that's for sure. And I'm going to spread this around to get a good covering, and this also helps it to keep it from oozing out and making a mess all over everything where you don't want the glue to go, but you're going to get a little bit of that no matter what you do. It's not going to hurt anything because we're going to do some weathering later. So I try to look at a mistake as a good thing, because you can usually turn it into something that's pretty neat. And now, because this glue is going to set up pretty quick, I want to try to get it lined up as closely as possible before I drop it into place. And then we're going to put it into place, line it it up a little bit more and then press it down. And since this is a laser cut wood, it generally doesn't take too long to set. And then a little bit later on, I'll be drilling a hole probably in here, or maybe towards the back, for the LED wire to go through, which will light the interior of the building. We'll get to that too. Okay, now that we've done that, you can see that it's kind of, maybe you can, maybe you can't, but it has straightened out the little bit of a warp that was here. Now to get these bad boys installed, since they're loose pieces, this is a little more tricky, because there's little nibs right here on each end of this piece that line up with the curvature on this piece for the sidewalks that surround the building. And you want to make sure that one of those nibs is going to line up with the other one, kind of like that, right here. So, once again, I'm going to take some of the super glue, the Gorilla Glue, and we're going to run just a nice little bead right along this edge. And I'm not concerned with this sticking to my granite board, because it's pretty easy to pull these up even after the glue has set up. I just simply use a razor blade. Yeah, just give it a little pop and it'll pop right off. You can see it's already kind of setting up. The other option is just to kind of move it back and forth until the glue sets up, and then you shouldn't have too much of a problem moving it. And then we take our other piece and check for the line up. Just to make sure it's lining up good for you. And then we do the same thing. Take a nice little bead of the Gorilla Glue and go right along the edge. These come in just over a half an ounce of fluid, which I know doesn't sound like much, but when you're using it in this way, in tiny little drops, it actually goes a long, long way when you're constructing the model. And then we take this piece and we line it up right to the edge. Now if you need to, after this gets set up a little bit better, we'll be able to flip it over and add some glue if you feel like that's something that you need to do. And I've had a lot of people comment, yes, I smoke. Well, I haven't had a lot of people comment. I've had a few people comment about how I can smoke around flammable materials. Well, the only real flammable thing I'm working with right now is this. And that takes a direct flame to get it lit anyway. Now, however, when I'm using this, you won't see me with a lit cigarette around this stuff, because this can go up just from the fumes. So open flames around that's a no-no. And then the paints that I use, there are some paints, the enamels and the lacquers that I use which can be flammable. But for the most part, with these models, I'm using water-based paints like this. So obviously when you're using water-based paints, the flammable aspect kind of goes out the window. So now we've done both sides of this, as you can see. And then next up, we want to paint this with a gray color. And once again, as I stated, I'm using water base. This is a pewter gray. And I get one of my paintbrushes out. Now in this case, I know that this goes a little against what a lot of people think and do and have been told, but I'm going to take this, since this is all going to be one color, and put some of the paint directly on it. And then we're just going to run this over, and I want to thin it out enough and get it spread out. So that those small lines that you see will show through. And I'll also be weathering this out more and more. I prefer to start with the dark colors first and then work my way out when it comes to the weathering with lighter colors. And once again, you don't have to be deadly accurate with the brush strokes, because it's not going to, in the end product, it won't show through. It'll be covered up with washes and dry brushing techniques. And you can see that the cracks are still kind of showing through there. That's exactly what you want. You don't want to fill those in. Keep in mind that every time you add a coat of paint, especially when it's thick, you're adding another layer. That's why in some houses and stuff, you see these houses that have been repainted over the years, and when they go to take the paint off the wall, you'll see like, 14, 15 different coats of paint. Well, that's because one at a time it just built up. Same thing with models. If you do a real thick, like if I left this here, it would cover that up completely. So I want to spread it out. And since this stuff does kind of dry pretty quick, you'll see that I'm kind of brushing pretty fast. Because I want to get it spread out. So that it doesn't do that. This is just something I've learned over the years. It's not, it's by no means infallible. And it's not everybody's way of doing things. Everybody does things a little bit different than the other person does. I've seen folks that prefer to airbrush. That's fine, airbrush. I do have an airbrush. I rarely use it, especially for models such as this. I prefer the brush technique. It just seems to make things a little easier for me. And this is just the way I kind of learned things and taught myself over the years. And I think one more little drop is going to do it for the gray. Get that spread out over this main part of the base. Now what I do is I allow this to dry. Since it's a water base, it usually dries pretty quickly, but I usually try to let it dry for a couple of hours before I move on to other things, like the adding of the washes or anything like that. But I do want to let this dry, so I'll end this video here, and hopefully that's a good way to get this thing off and running. I know that it was probably kind of boring, but this is how we do things when we're building models. So hope you enjoyed the video, and feel free to leave comments, suggestions, criticisms, whatever down in the comments. I appreciate everything. I try to respond to them all, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube. And the next video, I think what I'll be doing is I'm going to skip forward in the construction a little bit, and I'm going to put the roof together because I want to mount the LED into the roof. So that's upcoming. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.